I've been a major sports fan. My brother, there was an article written when they came to recruit him. It said there was a 1 or 2 year old bouncing a basketball around the house. So I've been around sports my entire life. Went to my first car race when I was 6 months old. My mom said she stuck me in a pillowcase. And every time it got dusty, she flipped the top over. So to have the opportunity to be able to do this is amazing. To be able to do it with Bill is even more amazing. Now, if you guys don't know who Bill is, I'm going to read a few things. I could stand up here for like 45 minutes or an hour to read all the accomplishments, but I just wanted to be able to share a couple of them. The 100 most important people in American sports history. That's a statement. He ranks 57. If you read the list, I don't know how many of them it's even made that list or near that list that were not athletes. But he made it as a non-athlete. Sports Illustrated, 40 for the ages, the top 40 people that has influenced sports. So many different Hall of Fames that, again, we would have to expand this session for at least an hour. So I'm not going to go into all of them. I got a couple of comments, or a couple of quotes here. Bill Rasmussen is truly the George Washington of ESPN. His accomplishments, however, transcended the boundaries of sports arena into areas beyond our wildest dreams. Chris Berman. The father of cable sports, USA Today. Bill Rasmussen dramatically altered and elevated the world of sports. What he did changed the landscape of TV sports, and that came from Sports Illustrated. I can remember growing up as a kid, we had one channel, really, ABC Wide World of Sports, and it was just like you had to watch 3 different events and nothing was, I mean, it was, and if you stop and think about what ESPN has done to the world of sports, and what we're about to do in the world of sports streaming for high schools and other events. And I'm not going to try not to steal any of Bill's thunder here, but it is a privilege to be put into this position. And it's also an honor for the city of Port Richey. Absolutely. I think you're going to hear something about a little town up in Connecticut. I don't know what the name of it is, but I'm sure he'll bring that up. And I know that you guys really didn't come here to hear me talk. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce to you the founder of ESPN, Bill Rasmussen.
Thank you, sir. Rod mentioned a little town up in Connecticut, and then I'm reflecting, this morning I was thinking about it. It was 38 years ago this past June that we had a group much like this. Few less people, though, because there were no believers back then. I mean, no believers. As a matter of fact, as we sat and we talked about what we were doing, some of the people got up and walked out. So if any of you walk out, we got Ed at one door. But anyway, it was intriguing to me, and as I reflect back and as I was coming here today, the people that stayed, listened attentively. We showed them the things like we're going to show you today about what Hometown Networks is about. And pretty soon we started getting some negative vibes. I mean, really negative vibes. So many vibes that by Christmas time, we had been invited to leave that little town. You probably thought I was talking about Bristol, but the town that we actually started in was Plainville, Connecticut. And they said, it's never going to work, and we don't want you and your big dishes in our city limits. They passed up something of an opportunity, you might say. Today, ESPN is the largest tax-contributing entity, obviously, to Bristol, Connecticut. They have done parks. They have done shelters. They have done child care centers. They're very, very much a part of the community. And of course, it has been very much a part of many lives in here, I suspect. I thought before Rod talks about, and before we show you some of the golly gee whiz things that are happening, that will be happening today, it would be good to get a little context and to see why I've been involved in sports the way I have. I literally have been around television and television sports since it began. Let me tell you the specifics. And NBC and CBS actually got underway in the late 1930s. And then some of you from history books and some of you from remembering, on December 7, 1941, things changed in the world, and things changed in the television world. During World War II, there were no television sets made, nor were there cars or refrigerators or a lot of other things. That's just the way it was. What happened during that time, because it was so critical, it's hard to believe this in today's Open Information Acts and so on. There's a great book called 31 Days in December. It's the book of 1941. During that time, President Roosevelt literally censored TV and radio. The only way we got any news at all about World War II was Saturday afternoon at the movies. The War Department wasn't the State Department.
Sorry.
See, we're going to hear some World War II stuff there. There we go.
I am so sorry.
But anyway, we could see 15 minutes at the local theaters every Saturday afternoon. That was all of the moving picture black and white news that we were able to see. Then in 1950, think about that, ABC came on the air. There were still, right after World War II, there were no more than 100,000 TV sets around, and most of those were in New York. 1950 came ABC. Now keep that date in mind, because by 1979, it was only 29 years later, we were telling everybody, we're going to change the sports world. People who grew up knew that ABC, NBC, and CBS were the big sports entities. Their version of the big sports entities. Anyone remember about how many football games, college football games run in a weekend back in the 1970s? 25. Not a weekend, a year. They were allowed to show 1 or 2 games. And in fact, in 1951, Walter Byers and the NCAA signed an agreement with ABC, NBC, and CBS that turned out and was ultimately overturned in 1984. It was an antitrust agreement to keep guys like us from being able to do college football games. They kept the market supply down to just 25 games a year. Now ESPN does more than 40 games a weekend, not to mention all the other networks that are doing it. So anyway, in that short interval from 1950 to 1979, the networks were king. We came up with this, quote, another wacky idea called Sports Center. Whoever's going to watch nothing but sports news. Well, I happen to be a sportscaster, and I was on the air every night, 5-minute show. I don't know if they still do that even anymore. 3.5 minutes is all you got to talk about sports. There's a 1-minute commercial, 15 seconds lead in, 15 seconds coming up. Without fail, I did that for 8 years, night after night, even through the weekends. Without fail, every single night, the phone would ring. Not because I was the most popular guy on television, certainly. I'll just give you one example. Red Sox-Yankees, great rivalry, everybody knows about that. And if I said something as straightforward as, and in the American League tonight, Boston 3, New York 2, the phone would ring. The Yankee fans would be saying, why are you always favoring the Red Sox? Well, they scored more runs than you tonight. If the score was reversed the next night, and I said, without any emotion, without any leanings at all, in the American League tonight, Yankees 3, Red Sox 2, the Red Sox fans would go, you carry our games and you talk about the Yankees that way? And gave the score. But that's the way it was, but we only had 3.5 minutes. So come time to start talking about our Sports Center idea. And the first thing we heard, isn't it amazing when you hear something new, the first thing everybody says is, it's not going to work. That just will not work. It's the way it is. You know why Sports Center will not work? Because ABC, NBC, and CBS at 6:30 at night have 93% of the audience. Now, who tells them that they have 93% of the audience? Well, Nielsen or whoever. There's some questions about how they do things too, but we're not going to go into that. Anyway, they said 93%. Why would you put on a show when 93% of America is watching those 3 channels, those 3 networks? Well, there's 7% who aren't. We'll take the 7%. Let's see what happens. Fast forward to today, those 3 networks at 6:30, are under 12% of the audience. Sports Center, many nights, depending on the season, depending on how hot the sports are, gets numbers that will blow the numbers away. So it's really kind of intriguing. In 1979, when ESPN started, we didn't have fax machines, we didn't have internet. Does anyone in here remember something called a selectric typewriter? That was advanced technology for us. I mean, to tell you, I had to learn all about technology, and it all came down to catching the satellite, and I had to have this one word, geosynchronous. Doesn't that sound really good? I mean, it sounds like I studied that somewhere, right? Geosynchronous orbit. The RCA SATCOM-1 satellite circles the Earth in a geosynchronous orbit, 22,300 miles in the sky above the equator just south of Hawaii. Wow, people say, you know all that stuff. How does that work? To this minute, standing right here today in Port Richey. I have no idea how television pictures fly through the air. They do though, and even in color sometimes. You should see the note they wrote to me on this. I can't repeat that. Anyway, we went from the electric typewriter age to the internet, and then they talked about HD TV for years and years and years, and finally that got underway in the late 80s and early 90s. And then we got really into the internet, and then streaming came along. And streaming has just opened the world because the technology is moving so fast these days. The perspective from no television, none, during World War II, to last year, ESPN streamed 82 billion minutes of sports activity around the country. If you do all the numbers, however many, 8,760 hours a year, 515,600 minutes in a year, divide that into 82 billion, you find out that ESPN did 156,000 plus years of streaming sports in 1 year. Sports is consumed, I guess, almost more than food, it seems, in some people's lives. I'm not sure. So what we're talking about and what Hometown Networks is about is yet another step forward. Really, all of you sitting here today, like those people sitting there 38 years ago in June, some of you may realize it because obviously you've seen what streaming is doing today. Back then, there was nothing with which to compare what our idea was. They couldn't understand how we would find the events to do. They couldn't understand how we would get the equipment and the cameras to get the pictures up to someplace, and they knew that they didn't live anywhere near. And you mentioned the word satellite, people just kind of blanked out. But anyway, that audience, you here today, they were sitting on the threshold of history, and I firmly believe you're doing the same thing right here today. You will remember this day when Hometown Networks has 500 or 600 or 5,000 or 6,000 high schools across the country. Hopefully, starting with Newport Richey, obviously. We're here, we want this to be number one. I'm a great believer in being the first guy there. Let's just arrive and make it happen. So welcome all of you to this moment in history, and Rod's going to come up and talk a little bit more about it because, as I said, beyond geosynchronous, I don't know anything about technology. Thank you very much.
All right. Rusty, we've got the video ready up here. So we're going to play that in just a couple minutes. You know, not only is Bill a business partner now, but he's a great friend. And I think one of the most unusual things, if you turn around and you can see the one little white camera and the one little box and the little blinking microphone. When they first did a college game, it took a 53-foot semi-truck to go out and do what that will do right there. That is amazing. When we talk about the ability to get high school athletes all over the country, the ability to get exposed, for people to be able to see them. One of the feedbacks that we're getting just right out of the box is from recruiters. I mean, think about it from a recruiter standpoint. They're sitting there going, okay, my budget is that I can only go out and do 15 trips. That's all the college says I can do. So which 15 athletes is he going to go see? You would hope it's the 15 that you're going to go sit down with mom and dad and see if you can sign them, right? Now they could sit there and actually watch the streaming to get enough of an idea of whether or not they're recruitable or not, or if that's the type of person that they want in their program. And we're going to do more things than just high school sports. We're going to be doing worship services. We're going to be streaming motorsports. I mean, that's dear to my heart. And I got to talk about motorsports. I'm going to tell one short little story here. 20 plus years I've been involved with NASCAR. Get pit passes here, and if you ever try to get a pit pass or all access pass for NASCAR, it's tough. It is not easy. So I decide that, Bill would like to go to a race. So I thought, well, the best thing to do is we're going to go to a little track in Mobile, Alabama. And I want him to see like the super grassroots of racing. And let me tell you what, this track is rough. It's old and it's dilapidated. And the next thing I know, he's on the starter stand throwing the green flag. I was like, well, I didn't get to do that. I have drivers, 2 drivers that we were bringing up, 2 young kids, 17 and 18, I think. They decided that they wanted to know if Bill wanted to ride around the track. I never had a driver ask me if he wanted to ride around the track. So they put him in a minivan, and they took laps. Well, NASCAR didn't like that. They basically thought that was an advantage. So later, we had rain going in and out of the day, and I was like, where is Spencer and Kyle? And somebody looked at me and said, they're being punished. They were literally standing in the parking lot directing traffic in the rain. And so I asked them when it was over, I said, man, I'm really sorry. They said, you know what? It's worth it. How many drivers can say they took Bill for a ride? So now we decided to go to the big NASCAR event, okay? So we make some arrangements. It says, look, Bill's going to come with us. And we get there. We pulled up to like to the elevator. I mean, we didn't even have to walk across the parking lot. Golf cart shuttled here, up to the chairman's suite. We sat with Bruton Smith. We ate like kings. I don't think I've ever been to a restaurant that had food like that place. So, well, what I'm trying to tell you is he's a great guy to hang around when it comes to the sports world. So you get to do a lot of really cool things. And I really want everybody to understand what we're about to do with high school sports. This is an amazing opportunity, and we're so excited to do that. I mean, our goal is, like Bill said, to put this in thousands and thousands of high schools around the country. And just thinking that it started here today in Newport Richey, Florida, will Newport Richey, Florida become the next Bristol, Connecticut? I believe that it will. Because here's the one thing that I can tell you about high school sports. There's more a passion for high school sports than anything else that's out there. Because it's the parents, it's the grandparents that get connected with this. And it's non-controversial. Professional sports today, you've got, athletes that are shooting people, beating their girlfriends up, all of this stuff that's going on. And down in its purest form is high school sports. That passion is what's going to drive this.
Right.
So over here you can see some video running. I thought today I thought, man, that was a glitch, but that was actually the goal pole. You can see, what we can be able to do at these games. Now, it's not just about that, but it's also about the fact that coaches now can come back and actually review the games, be able to zoom in on different players, be able to use this as a training device. Now, for some of you know that we have a big studio on the back side of this and a tremendous amount of equipment. If you can see, Rusty can show you what he's controlling this with. That's it. It's in his hand. It's amazing. It's an iPad. Who would have thought? Steve Jobs would have been like, oh, wow, I didn't see that coming. So from the technology standpoint, this is literally amazing that we can stream any game. We could have cameras in Los Angeles, California, and we could be editing the game right here in Newport Richey. Eventually, there's going to be cameras put up around the city. And I think I was granted 3 locations. Not sure what the locations are, but every single time that our sales force does a demonstration, it's going to be from here. It's going to be showing Sims Park. It's going to say right on the screen, live from Newport Richey, Florida. I hope all of you understand how big a deal that is. To me, that's a big, big deal. You know, the other thing is that maybe we didn't see coming, I didn't anyway, Bill probably did, was the schools are coming back and saying, you know what, there's been a void in our curriculum, and that is that we have all of these kids that want to get into TV. We didn't have anything for them. We're going to be able to show these kids how to produce and broadcast the games that their high schools are playing. To me, that is another amazing thing. Has anybody been left out of a graduation because a grandchild or somebody was only given 2 tickets? Can you imagine now that people, friends, grandparents all over the world will be able to watch those types of events? So as you can see, the technology, what we're going to be able to do, literally is endless. So again, I want to thank all of you for coming today. I want to open it up if anybody's got any questions. And I know I didn't do that good of a job explaining it.
No, you didn't.
I'll come up just if anybody has a question. I have a question for you. I'll think of one later. If you had your druthers, what would be the first school you'd watch?
Well, I mean, that's an easy one. Gulf High, right here in Port Richey. You know, if we're going to be home based here, because you know, as Bill said earlier, there's only one number 1. There's not a chance to be number 1 the second time. So we really want to get that into Gulf High School, and so that they can always say they were the first high school in the nation to have this technology at their accessibility. Jeff, if you have a question?
Just 2 quick questions. Would you be supplying the schools with the cameras, number 1, and number 2, who would be training these kids on how to produce the games?
Well, as being the non-technical person up here, and then we're like parallel here, the very unique thing about this is how simple that this system is to use. When we first saw the demonstration of it, not being a technical person, I could actually produce it because I could move my finger around on the screen. As far as putting the equipment into the high schools, there's a couple things. We're looking at municipalities, for cities that want to support that, whether the high schools have that in their budget or not. We're talking to some major corporate sponsorships, but once everybody understands that this might have been, what, a couple $100,000 to $40,000, $50,000 is a fraction of that cost.
I think the training opportunity was best illustrated when the manufacturers went to the NAB this past spring, and they had a new products area, and a father and son were walking by, and father was interested in sports, and he kind of playing with the iPad and so on. And his 10-year-old son said, can I try it? The 10-year-old son did far better than the father. And anybody who is probably 14 and under, or 12 and under, or maybe, I don't know, Rusty, what would be the age these days? 8 and under, I guess. Yeah. They've grown up with this. They take to it like, you know, the fish to water, as they say. And suddenly, the little 10-year-old was producing the game, moving around, following the ball, zooming in, zooming out. Let's do a replay. I don't know how to do that. I mean, I'm still one of these kind of typers on a computer. I shouldn't admit that in front of so many people, but I really am. That's just the way it is. So I think that, the training is very simple, and it's as far as mounting the camera at the appropriate location, it's a fixed mount, or, as I understand it, see, I don't even know this question, tripod? Tripod as well. Oh, I'm looking at a tripod. Not very observant either, obviously.
And then, Bill, one comment. I want to thank you because I have a 7-year-old son who's a sports fanatic, and we never have to worry about him getting out of bed because he's down eating breakfast, so he can watch the top 10.
Watch that Sports Center early.
Sports Center top 10 every morning.
Well, you know what? I've heard a lot of reasons for Sports Center being appreciated. I've never heard anyone say it gets my son out of bed in time. That's a new one. I'll have to keep that one in mind.
I see the volume, and then you say the editing will be done here. To what extent are we editing? So we wouldn't have.
We don't have to be editing here. It's if someone wants to have it remote edited, we can edit a scout's highlight reel if they want it.
Oh.
That kind of thing.
The actual broadcasting and editing will be done hopefully by the students.
Oh, okay.
They'll be sitting there with the system using that iPad to actually edit it from that point. And one quick thing I wanted to bring up too was what Hometown Networks, one additional thing that they're doing for the city, I mean, basically, is that we have another company here called My Network One. The president of My Network One back there is Ed Kleinmeyer. And Ed just came on board to allow me to be able to kind of shift some energy towards this over here. So it's really double fold of how good this is for the city and what it's going to mean for them. So, yes, sir.
Honored to be invited and be part of this. I don't know who everybody else here is, but what's our role? What's our, with the Chamber of Commerce a little bit south of here. So what's our role in assisting with this or whatever?
Well, I think today was just
Get acquainted.
the first day of getting acquainted, putting some awareness out there that this is available. Hopefully you'll go back into your local community and get with the right people and say, hey, you gotta check this out. This is an amazing opportunity.
I can think of a Chamber of Commerce, for example. There is an opportunity for local advertising, for example, on the local high school game. Depending on how much activity and how good the team is, and if they're 14-0 or 18-1 going for the state championship, I imagine advertising on that live broadcast might be advantageous to some of your members, for example. There are any number of ways that they can participate.
Well, I know we're talking about high school football. We come from a community that now has one of the, I think, 3 or 4 in the country, super BMX tracks. And they're actually training people in fact, they train people for the Rio Olympics. Right down our little city, so I can see,
Oh, absolutely, a use for that.
community and everything else. I've seen plenty of opportunity for doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can see the scope of this it's huge. Are you looking for a sales force? What's your way of getting the word out?
He's already
nationwide?
building a sales force, and unfortunately, they won't be in until next week.
Yeah,
They're all going to be sitting right where you're sitting next week.
yeah, this room will be full of people from all across the United States. They're flying in on Monday. They will be here Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for training. They've been training in the My Network One University for the last 2 weeks. And I can tell you, a couple of these guys that I know that work for the Dallas Cowboys, been involved with NCAA licensing, that I've been trying to kind of work something up with them for like 13 years. And they heard about this, and it's like, when do I gotta be there?
That's great.
So yes, we are already moving in that direction.
If we thought about it, we could have had all of you here with them, and that would have been a lot of confusion, wouldn't it?
Excellent.
Any other thoughts or questions from anyone? Yes, sir.
Is it possible for the city of Port Richey to buy this unit and then the Chamber of Commerce meeting, have it up there
That's exactly.
to
Absolutely.
recruit, to see what's going on
Yeah.
there? The city commission meeting or the council meeting, they'd have it at that point. There's the possibilities of recording these things are mobile, and the city owns it. What can you not do with it?
Right. Well, that's the mobility of it. I think that the way that we see it in the future is to have a fixed camera like in the gymnasium. So now we're doing boys basketball, girls basketball, wrestling, we're doing, girls volleyball, we're doing graduation, we're doing really swimming, anything that's going on inside these facilities. The same thing, most of these things here were shot up in the East Coast. But that's the concept, it's you got a system on every single type of athletic event, field and or court that's out there.
And I would add to that we haven't thought of all the ways, just as you pointed out, there are going to be other ways that this can be used. I don't know, does the Division of Motor Vehicles want to record their test drivers for new license? I'm just making this up because I've had a recent accountant. But the point that I'm trying to make is we don't claim to have all of the answers to however many things, how many ways this can be used. I think it's the opportunities are limitless. And when I look back and I'm watching Rusty standing there and those 3 little pieces of equipment can do this around the world, and it's incredibly affordable. It's staggering. What else can we think of to take advantage of that system? And what's going to happen as this system improves to the next level? They're already talking about going from the 4K camera, which is pretty good, really good, to an 8K camera, which is even better. So it's not a static, we're here, we got this, and this is what we're gonna do in A, B, C, and D. We're gonna learn every day, and we're gonna be doing new things as new equipment and new opportunities come out.
Thank you so much. With the small businessman in mind, with the depressed economic situation we've been in for so long, this gives them such a heads up because they can do demos and have live stream and then make the world their marketplace.
All they have to do is have a page on their
Absolutely.
website that says, come here and watch.
That's right, and car dealerships and whatnot, and the Chamber of Commerce, you can actually get people involved by streaming, like you said, the meetings and whatnot. It's just endless possibility where you can make the isolated neighbor and community that feels so isolated, no longer isolated, but get the messages out.
I think it's great down here, but can you imagine what it's gonna be like in the dead of winter in a blizzard up in Montana?
Lovely.
Nobody's gonna drive to there won't be anybody there, they'll just stay home and watch. It's too cold.
Just to let you know, right now, we are streaming live
Yeah,
to YouTube, to Facebook, to WEB-TV, and to Hometown Networks. It's going on right now as you sit here.
fantastic.
That's why I walked back up here, I was out of the picture, I had to get back.
That's right. So,
Any other thoughts or questions or anything?
You
Yes,
know,
sir.
Of course, technically, I would think, given your background in geosynchronous and all that other kind of stuff, well, you learn that word a lot faster. I understand that stuff pretty well, but you don't need any infrastructure.
Correct.
right.
You have no infrastructure.
That's exactly right. To give you a comparison, Rod mentioned before about the ball games and the way they're produced today. Back when I guess in 1963, when I started television, we had a big van to go produce a game.
Oh, yeah.
Cameras were almost as big as the table in front of you,
Yeah.
and they got a little better. And then they finally got down to handheld cameras, but they still have others. Earlier this year, I was at Yankee Stadium, courtesy of my friends in ESPN. They were doing a Sunday night game. They had two 18-wheelers, chock full of all kinds of screens and everything else, and 90 people, 90, to produce one baseball game.
Right.
We went on the air in 1979 with 80 people, the whole network, 80 people. So we're cutting in, obviously this isn't made for Major League Baseball or the NFL or anything of the kind, that's not the intention.
Right.
But we can give fans just as good or maybe a better picture with fewer cameras, with a camera, than high schools would ever have the
And with
opportunity.
no communications infrastructure or anything else.
Nothing. Just plug it in and away we go.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I think it's, like I said before, I didn't know how television pictures fly through the air. I don't know how this works either, but it works.
Yeah.
That's all we have to know.
Mhm.
Anything else?
Can voice be added to it?
Well, thank you, as I said earlier,
Absolutely.
thank you for all.
We're streaming audio right now.
And thank you all, as I said earlier, for being here at this particular moment in history. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, let's look back and see what's happened from those three little pieces back here.
Right.
And some of you, I'm sure, will be involved in helping that grow, and I hope that you all are. Thank you very much.
So thank you all again for coming, and feel free to stick around for a little while. And